Something else I noticed, if you still want to see, if you don't have any questions, there's something else I noticed, but I just wanted, is there any questions or comments about that?
I was just going to ask whether it's tied into the idea of sozo. Sozo, you've seen the book written by an Adventist that's all about the word healing and wholeness in the New Testament.
To say sozo. Yeah.
Sozo, just
Is
yeah.
the Greek word to mean to heal or to save. Like D apostrophe S-O-Z-O.
Yeah,
Sozo.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, which really has the idea of complete restoration is really what it means.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, like we see in John 5,
Yes.
when Jesus keeps using the word whole or wholeness.
Yes.
Yeah,
Would you be made whole? Yes.
that's right.
Yeah.
See, God has been trying to get it through to our heads, but that's what he says. If we had eyes to see and ears to hear, then we would understand and we would turn and he would restore us to wholeness. But we don't, but our eyes don't see and our ears don't hear. What happens is the idea is that we stop, we shut down our input devices so that we don't get any new information because disturb our little world that we live in, and we don't want our little world disturbed. So we shut our eyes so that we can't see, and we close our ears so that we can't hear. And that's what he describes our heart in fatness, that we're comfortable with ourselves the way we are. We don't want to grow. We don't want to change. And by the way, that is death, because I'm dying. And then when I shut my eyes and my ears to God's invitation to restoration to rightness, then the consequences of rejecting that invitation is that I'm going to die. I'm going to continue to fall apart.
I think it's really interesting how Isaiah is, called as a prophet in Isaiah 1, and he prophesies and he's telling Israel, how wrong they are and all the apostasy that's going on, and he's in many ways correctly identifying the problems, but he gets to chapter 6 here and he sees God for himself, he sees the king, and he realizes, I'm no better than these people I've been denouncing.
That's right.
And then he's ready to actually go back and tell them their condition in a way that God can use to save others.
Well, he becomes the demonstration, right?
Yes.
Because this is when God starts telling Isaiah, well, you have to walk around with no clothes on, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, right? And
Yeah.
Isaiah literally becomes a living demonstration of the message, not just the words that he's saying, but his life, his character becomes that
Yes.
demonstration.
And Sister
And
White talks
by the way,
about
that's what
how.
Isaiah is called.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Sister White talks about how Isaiah, did everything that you were supposed to do, but when he saw the king, he realized that his whole religion was just a cold formalism, she says.
Mm.
And
Right.
then he saw his heart the way it really was. That's when he was undone.
Yep. By the way, that's the same thing that happens to Daniel. That's the same thing that happens to John. It's the same thing that
Yes.
happened to Moses. It's the same thing that happened to Jeremiah. Same thing that happened to Elijah. It's the same thing that happens to any creature that encounters God. Even the living the holy living creatures who have never sinned, when they see themselves in the light of the Creator, they fall on their face and they cry, "Holy, holy, holy." That's
Yeah.
just amazing.
Mm.
Well, I mean
So
that whole.
how is it? How could we expect, as sinful creatures, expect anything different?
And I really see, Adventism in that experience. That was called of God. It had a prophetic mission. It was telling the other churches all the apostasy that they were doing wrong, and it was true, but we didn't see ourselves the way that we really are before God. And he needs one.
Yes.
He needs ones to have that encounter so that he can send them out for this final message.
Well, and see, this is the whole point of the Sabbath, right? The whole
Yeah.
Sabbath, the point of the Sabbath is to worship the Creator. But what's the point of worshiping the Creator? Well, I went to church on the right day. No, no, no. Worshiping the Creator means that I'm being restored to wholeness.
Mm.
That's what the Sabbath is. It's what it's all about. resting in him and him resting in us, so we're restored to wholeness. So if I'm not being restored to wholeness, I don't know anything about keeping the Sabbath. I have no clue what it means. I don't care what day you go to church. That's not the point. And so this is what has happened is that we get right information. Well, the Sabbath is the seventh day, and then we run around and tell everybody, "I'm going to church on the right day, but you're going to church on the wrong day." Yeah, and what's the point of that? The question is, are you being restored to wholeness? Are you reflecting the character of your Creator? If the answer is no, then I don't care what you're doing on what day. It doesn't matter. And this is why Mrs. White says that the messengers will go forth in the end, and they'll be preaching on the Sabbath, and Sabbath keepers are going to be angry with them when they preach the message. Why? Because these people are going to go around challenging these people that are saying, "Well, I go to church on the right day," and the point is, yeah, and what point is that? What
The,
benefit
Jew,
is that to you?
the Jews went to synagogue on the right day too.
Right. And so when we start telling them that going to church on the right day, oh, my whole life I've gone to church on the right day, and yeah, and when you start telling them the truth that that doesn't matter, they're going to get angry with you, and they're going to prove that they're not restored to wholeness because they're going to kill you,
And the
just like they
Jews are
did
on
Jesus.
the
Go
Jews are
ahead,
on
Sharon.
their way to celebrate Passover as they pass by the cross.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This makes the sanctuary turn from the idea of being a place of death to being a place of life.
Yes, that's right. Because it is a source of life. Yeah,
You
that's why
said
it's
I
a book of life, and water of life, and the bread of life, and the tree of life, and the light of life, and all these descriptions. Yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, you were saying before that Isaiah is called something. Could you
The
tell us
gospel
what?
prophet.
Oh, the gospel.
He's called the gospel prophet. Yeah. Because he has all these revelations of the Messiah. And so, and it's very interesting that he begins to see the restoration of the kingdom. In Isaiah chapter 1, God gives him a message to tell these people of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is his own people, by the way, that they've left their creator, they've left their owner, they've abandoned the Holy One, right? And then he says in Isaiah 2, but in the last days the kingdom is going to be restored, and that life, his law is going to flow from it, and all this, the creation is going to take place, right? And so Isaiah chapter 2, and then in from 2 to 5, he goes through this process of describing the restoration of the kingdom and then the positive and negative effects. In 5, he gives a parable of the vineyard, and with the woes, and then a song about the vineyard, and then chapter 6, he has this revelation of the king. And then 7, 8, and 9 deal with this prophecy where Isaiah is going to have children, and those children are going to have names, and the names of those children become symbols of the work that God's going to do. And of course, amidst that prophecy is the prophecy of the coming of the firstborn of the Messiah in Isaiah 9, we talk about Emmanuel, and the virgin's going to give birth to a child, right? The sign that God's going to give to Isaiah. And then, of course, in Isaiah 11, you have this branch is going to be coronated as king, and the root of Jesse, and then the restoration is going to take place, formation of the nature of creatures, and the song that takes place in Isaiah 12. So the first part of Isaiah is all about this revelation of the king and the restoration of his kingdom, and how anyone connected to this king, worshiping the king or connected to his kingdom, is going to be restored to rightness. And those who reject it are actually they're going to fall apart. And after chapter 12, then verse 13, he starts talking about the burden of Babylon. He starts dealing with all these nations that surround Israel that are not receiving the light that God is shining through the messengers that he's going to send out. So anyways, yeah, the whole two books of Isaiah follow this pattern. And throughout it, there's this revelation of the glory of God that will restore people to rightness, and then the consequences of those who reject that message. That's why Isaiah is called the gospel prophet, because it's the revelation of the new king, which is what the word gospel means. So yeah, that's God is just neat.
When you talked about the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God, and you talked about that that we thought that probation closed there. Well, it actually can't, because it's not until it's the 3 times that they blaspheme him, and the last one is the 7th plague. So there's still time here, even though when you said in the 4th, and they did not repent and give him glory, right?
Yep.
I just find it interesting that they go into that. It's like the first time they did not repent to give him glory, the repenting of his name, but then each time, except for the 6th bowl, it's not mentioned, but the 7th bowl as well. So it's like you said, when it was the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd, there was no blaspheming there. Only the 4th, 5th, and the 7th bowl.
It doesn't say it is done.
Until the 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 7 plagues are actually the same process.
Yeah.
That the seven seals are the process
Mhm.
for God's people in the most holy place. The 7 trumpets are the process, and of course they extend, as I said before. The 6th part goes
Right.
out and gives the whole process to the next group. But the idea is that it's the same process that goes to each of the 3 parts of the kingdom, each 3 parts of the domain. So the seals, the trumpets, and the plagues describe the 3 parts of the domain. And by the
Mhm.
time you're in the plagues, you're in the outer court, which now
Mhm.
you're dealing with the non-covenant people. So probation has closed for the priests of the most holy place, and it has closed for some of the people that claimed to be God's people in the trumpets. But
Yeah.
then anyone that probation has not closed for up to that time, then light goes out to them in terms of 7 last plagues. And then when that is done, then probation is closed. There is no more
Yes.
salvation, because that's when the high priest pours the blood out at the base of the altar. There's no more blood. So there's no more mediation or
Yeah.
forgiveness for sin. And that
Yes.
happens at the 7th plague. It's just interesting, because the phrase that we know, he that is holy, let him be holy still. He that is
Also,
righteous, let him be righteous still. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. Well, that phrase is in Revelation 21. And
Very
so
true.
many times, we quote that as a reference to the close of probation, which is true. But the
yes.
point is that God is not anxious to close probation. That God is merciful and trying to save everyone that He can possibly save. And for some reason, Adventism has honed in on this idea that when probation closes for them, it closes for everybody else, and it's just not it's not accurate. And our message to the rest of the world is not trying to tell them when their probation closes. That's not our message. No, our message is supposed to be a demonstration of God's ability to restore to rightness in ourself. And when we go forth with the true message, which is a revelation of His demonstration to restore us to wholeness, then that invitation goes out to them. If they reject that message, then their probation is closing.
Yes.
But Jesus is the only one that can close someone's probation. Nobody else. But see, what happens is that you'll notice the remember from Revelation 14, there's out of the temple, out of the temple, out of the altar,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then you have the same thing here in verse
Yeah.
15, 16. You have out of the temple, verse 15, chapter 15, out of the temple again, 16, verse 1, and then out of the altar, verse 7. But then you'll notice that something happens in 16. In verse 7, you have out of the altar, and then verse 17 is out of the temple. And so there's this out of the temple, out of the temple, out of the altar, out of the temple, out of the temple, out of the altar. But then you have out of the altar and then out of the temple. So that the thing is switched. And the last one, when he says out of the temple, that's the 7th plague. Then it says it is done. So the idea is that the glory of God is going out, it's going out, it's going out. The ministration of God is going out and trying to save, trying to save, trying to save. And then when he after he's done this multiple times, 3 times, when after he's done that, the 3 angels' message, then it is done. Probation. That's when probation closes. All the movement here is out of. It's out of. It's the coming out process. This is obviously this is what I've been I'm trying to get people to consider. I'm trying to get people to check this out. I mean, we're experts about him going in, but we have totally lost the whole idea of the process of him coming out. And this is the time that his glory is to come out of the temple and to start transforming, restoring his image, his likeness in his people.